I was raised during the Civil Rights era, and I was born during a time when there was for white only, for colored only signs. I had a family of two, my mother and father were school teachers, so I'm from a family of school teachers. My parents came from HBCUs, small black colleges. Everybody in my family went to small black colleges except for me. I went when you grow up in the South, deep South like I did, and you grow up during the Jim Crow era like I did, our neighborhoods were segregated, so we were all very close to each other. My parents were teachers, lived next door to textile workers, who lived next door to laborers, who lived next door to preachers, who lived next door to domestics. So it was one of those neighborhoods where we all looked out for each other and we were all very close. My parents taught during the day and helped students in the neighborhood at night who may have needed help with their homework, help reading and writing. My parents believed in service, very service-oriented parents. They believed my brother and I, my younger brother and I, were here for a purpose. They taught us. So we are here to serve others, and our purpose involves serving others. And my family made sure my brother and I knew our history as African Americans, as black. So I'll interchange black and African Americans. They wanted us to know, since we were growing up in the Deep South, during segregation, during Jim Crow era until it stopped, that we had to know our history. So my brother and I had to keep up with everything going on with blacks in history. I'm the oldest, so that means that I had to keep up with Martin Luther King, keep up with Malcolm X, and my parents allowed me to watch all of the protests. We had black and white TV, so I could keep up with the marches and the protests and the history of African Americans. So just to sum it up, my parents were very pro-history, pro-service, that pro-purpose, and we're very church-oriented. The church was a major part of my family, like my whole neighborhood, and we had to go to church every Sunday, and Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and all during the week. So I had a strong church, spiritual background, strong family, and strong friends. While my parents were so intent on making sure I knew my history, I had to watch the black and white TV of all the protests, Martin Luther King, and I saw, and I was a little girl, in 1963, I will never forget, Bull Connor releasing the dogs on the black people in Birmingham, Alabama. So can you imagine being a little girl sitting in front of the TV because your parents say, we need to watch TV because this is part of your history. You need to know the protests and you need to know the obstacles we have to overcome. But as a little girl, watching Bull Connor release the dogs horrified me. I was traumatized. And I remember my parents talking behind me, and they said, those poor people are going to jail. Now, as a little girl, you don't understand what they're saying. And then my father said, well, of course, good lawyers will get them out. So as a little girl, I'm watching the dogs run after the black people, women and children, knowing now that they're going to go to jail, then lawyers were going to get them out. So right then and there, I knew I was going to be a lawyer. I knew within my spirit, I knew within my heart, I was going to be a lawyer. Plan A, I had no plan B. That was it. I was going to be a lawyer. Had never seen a lawyer. If I did, I didn't know one. Definitely had not seen a black lawyer. Definitely had not seen a black female lawyer. But I knew that I was going to be one so that I could help people who were in need there.
And what specific areas of law kind of drew you in?
Okay, trial. I always wanted to be a trial attorney, always, because everything stemmed from what I saw going through the history of African Americans. So having parents who were history-oriented, I knew about Thurgood Marshall, and I knew about the fight for desegregation. I knew about all that, and that encouraged me to be a trial attorney. But you ask about what made me go to USC. As fate would have it, James Solomon, who integrated the University of South Carolina, was a member of my church. So my church, being history-oriented, when you're raised in a black community, you have black community, you have black church, you have black doctor's office, black hospital, that's segregation. That's how it was. So Jim Solomon was with us as a member, and he often told us about how he desegregated the University of South Carolina. So me hearing that, I thought, I can go to the University of South Carolina because they have a law school. And I want to go to the law school to become a lawyer. So talking with Jim Solomon and then watching his history, I then said, it's a possibility. I can go to a PWI, predominantly white institution, and I was accepted at the University of South Carolina in 1975. And then in 1979, I was accepted to the University of South Carolina Law School. And USC integrated in 1963. The law school integrated in 1964. So I was coming in at times that I felt that the law school, not the undergrad, that the law school wasn't quite ready or used to African Americans yet, because it was extremely difficult to attend the University of South Carolina Law School and then graduate from the University of South Carolina Law School. I was there with all of us African American students, black students, were close. We were there with children of judges and children of lawyers. But none of us, most of us, didn't come from households with judges and lawyers. We were first generation lawyers. So in class, we were up against those who could speak about the law because they heard it in their households. I couldn't. I just knew about the history of African Americans and the obstacles we had to overcome, and I used that to push me through law school. Because one of my professors said to me my first year that I was taking the place of a white student because I got in through affirmative action. I did not, but I got in through affirmative action, and he said that he would help me to get back to my old job, but he wanted me to leave, and of course I did not. We stayed there and pushed through. Probably the first black person as president of YLD, and I didn't realize that until I was going through my notes thinking, was there another black person before me? And I couldn't think of one. Did you know, was there one? Do you know? I knew there was no female, but do you know?
You might have to do some research on that.
I knew, but I know my history pretty good about the bar, and I don't think there was another black. But I didn't think about that. I was recruited by Joel Smith, one of the attorneys, and he saw me downtown, and he said, I want to have lunch with you. I want you to get involved with the Young Lawyers Division. Didn't know what that was. But I said, sure, because I was invited by an attorney who had more experience than me. I encourage all young attorneys to get involved with the YLD, Young Lawyers Division. I became president of YLD, but I was well trained because what the bar does is that it gives you a lot of time to learn the dynamics of the bar, the foundation, and the ABA. So I was treasurer and secretary and vice president and president, then past president. For those years, the South Carolina Bar sent us on trips so that we could be trained, so that we could meet other lawyers, and so that we could come back and then do a service and promote public service among us lawyers. I think the YLD is the best kept secret because when you're a young lawyer, you're so busy ready to get out into the field to start working, and then you get isolated, you get stressed, you get depressed, and you forget that that can lead to you not enjoying the practice of law. What the YLD does, it creates a network, and it also helps you to appreciate the law. It's not all about making money, regardless of what people say. It's about service and doing good for others, and the YLD is a vehicle for that. And I got involved with the Bar Foundation, and I always give to the Bar Foundation. Had I not been involved in YLD, I would not know about the Bar Foundation, and I would not be promoting or giving to the Bar Foundation. So to be involved with YLD is and was the best thing that could happen to me So I now promote young attorneys to get involved with YLD.
And you're still very much involved. You're on the diversity committee. Tell me about that, why that's important to you, and just any other committees that you currently serve on.
Okay, I am on the Elder Law Committee, and the reason I'm on the Elder Law Committee is because I have dedicated my life and my practice to helping those who are underserved. Oftentimes it's the elderly, and oftentimes it's some young people. So on the Elder Law Committee, I get to network with other lawyers who specialize in elder law. I'm on the Diversity Committee, which I absolutely love. And remember, this is new for me because when you come up through the ranks of the South Carolina Bar, there was no Diversity Committee. This committee here has a great chairman, and it promotes diversity, but diversity with this committee is defined more than just African American and females. Diversity has a wide definition at this time. So I'm learning more about how the bar is diverse, how we have diversity within the bar, and the committee just gives me an opportunity to learn more about diversity. So I'm in the Diversity Committee, Bar Convention Committee, which I haven't done anything with them yet. And then I just got selected to be the representative for Region 2 for senior lawyers. So this weekend I'll be going with the senior lawyers to learn my new duties as the representative for the senior lawyers also. So, but before then I've been involved in military law, family law, probate law committees, all of that. So I've been involved all my life as a part of the South Carolina Bar.
Now let's talk about achievement. You talked about the challenges that you faced growing up, even some challenges in law school. What was that moment like when you were sworn in as the first African-American female judge in South Carolina?
The first, to get to that point, you have to know my history because you carry the burden of so many people. Not only so many African Americans, so many black people from the neighborhoods, but people who have had problems overcoming. Everybody will have obstacles in their life. Everybody will have hard times. So people, and I appreciated that, people looked at me like, wow, she overcame so much to be the first, then I can do it too. All people could. So to become the first African American female judge I was elated, very happy, very proud, very humbled, but I was well aware of the weight that I was now taking. When you're in the judiciary, every judge will tell you your life is under a microscope. But being African American and female, you multiply that times, say 1 million. As the first, my life was under a microscope. So I was very proud, but I wanted to be a person who encouraged others to also come to the judiciary. My parents, and I have to give a lot of credit to my parents, they taught me that as a trailblazer, your job is not to be the only one. Your job is to open up the trail for others. That means, Abigail, you're going to be hit by the limbs, my father used to say, and my father was an elected official here in Richland County. And he said, you're going to be hit by the limbs, but you have to weather that because others have to come behind you. So that was just an example of I had to experience the obstacles of being the first. And anytime you're the first, Barack Obama or anybody in history, you will get more obstacles than somebody else who is not African American or African American and female.
And can you talk about why representation is so important?
Yes.
As far as being black and being a woman, the significance of your appointment.
The reason why I hesitated is I was on the bench almost 30 years ago. And we're still having this discussion today about diversity on the bench. That's why I hesitated. And I thought, we're still having this discussion. It is important that you have diversity on the bench. The reason why, Damaris, is because the bench should reflect the society we live in. And the judiciary and our legal system promotes equality, fairness, equal justice for all. But that's hard to believe if the bench in the judiciary is all white. It's very hard for people to believe that they're going to receive fairness and justice if they don't see themselves involved in the bench. So diversity is very important because each judge brings to the bench their own uniqueness, their own characteristics, their own unique experiences. This makes for a richer judiciary and also promotes fairness and justice for all litigants. Yeah. So that's why diversity is important in every aspect, whether it's judiciary, every aspect of society. You just need diversity.
And you talk a lot about family, especially in your upbringing. You were also the first African-American female family court judge in South Carolina. What did that feel like, being that you're so family-oriented? And I guess what cases kind of stuck out to you the most? What were your favorite?
Being the first African-American female judge, being the first African-American family court judge, carried the same weight. So one thing about being a judge, I often tell people, I have judge knowledge and I have lawyer knowledge. As a judge, you take your cases very seriously. So I had a lot of cases that involved children, and at that time, I was married, but I didn't have a child. So I was making decisions on children's lives and families' lives that really kept me up at night. Then I had a baby while I was on the bench. Then I really agonized and thought about, as a mother, how my decisions were going to affect other mothers. I was very hard on child support. I feel that everybody, whether it's man or female, should have a responsibility in paying for their child and raising their child and being responsible for their child. So with that, I had the stress of being family court judge. Being in family court is difficult. There's families. Judge Perry, one of my mentors, always said, when people leave your courtroom, nobody's going to be happy, and they're going to blame you. So a lot of times my decisions were what I felt was fair and just, and neither side was happy with the decision. But it's all a part, as judges would say, of being a judge. And they teach you in judges school that oftentimes people will not be happy with your decisions, but do the best you can with the facts, apply the law, and then you have to go to your next case. You can't sit in one case and agonize because you have so many that you have to go ahead and consider. They will come before your court. One thing that was difficult is seeing my courtroom being African American when so many of the litigants were African American. I took great pride and responsibility for being a role model to young black kids that were coming in my courtroom, but I had to oftentimes rule on their cases. Sometimes they felt, since I was from the neighborhood or I looked like them, that they should have an easy break, or they should feel like I should have been easier on them. But my reputation was, it didn't matter what color you were, what sex you were, I was very fair. And so it bothered me oftentimes when I'd see a lot of minority juveniles come through the courtroom and I would have to make decisions on their lives there. So that would keep me up at night, because I'd often think, what can we do in the community? What can we do at church to try to help them before they get to the court system? And that has always been something that I've tried to work for, even after the bench. Yeah.
Are you still practicing law today?
Yes. Going back to diversity, one thing was, if you know my history, and here we are today talking about diversity, and we'll go back. When I came up for re-election, I was replaced by a white female. So then that took diversity. They took African American females off the bench for years until another one came. Although I was the first, there was a gap again, and then other African American females ran and were on the bench. I got tenure at Benedict, but today I practice law, practice elder law. I help people in small businesses, and I'm in private practice, and I often help other firms. But my passion, what I do in my spare time, is I help aspiring lawyers to pass the bar. One of my mentees, and anyone I help becomes my mentee. And I saw her crying over a contracts book in Starbucks, and I said, "Are you crying over contracts?" And she said, "No, I'm crying because I failed the bar." And I said to her, "Let me see if I can help you with this." So I began to spend time with her, tutoring her on how to pass the South Carolina bar. The bar is not easy. And there's one thing I want to say. You can study to get through law school, but studying for the bar is a lot different. So I was successful after that. And she began to tell others that when they failed the bar, there's somebody I used. And then I started getting, through the years since 2010, many, almost between 50 and 100 young aspiring lawyers that I help, and older aspiring lawyers that I help pass the bar. I have a great track record, almost 100%. But I learned how to do this from my role model in law school. As awful as law school was at times, but I had good friends in law school. I had one professor, Judge Randall Bell, who taught me how to help others to pass the bar. He said, and to tell you about his background, he was a judge on the Court of Appeals. He was my professor for many years. I worked with him after I graduated from law school, just on different projects. He went to the Court of Appeals, and he was the judge-elect to the South Carolina Supreme Court, and then he died. But I was one of his mentees for years. He predicted or saw that in the future, there were going to be many who were going to have a problem passing the South Carolina bar, and mainly minorities. He saw it, and he was white. And so he said, "Abigail, I'm going to show you how to help others." And remember, I come from a service-oriented family, and my purpose is here to help others. And he knew that. So he said, "I'm going to teach you the tools to help others to pass the bar." And my comment to that was, who's going to be desperate enough to ask me to help them to pass the bar as much as I struggle? Well, as fate would have it, I now have a new passion, which really was my passion then, is to help those who have problems passing the bar to pass the bar, mainly minorities. There are others that fail the bar. There are other whites that fail the bar. But if you look at the numbers, it's disproportionately minorities who fail the bar. And I feel, and I'm passionate about it, if you go to law school, you spend all that time, all that stress, agonize over exams, and you get out, you deserve to pass the bar to become a lawyer. And so that is my passion, along with practicing law and helping the elderly there. And I do that in my spare time. Now, I practice law, but I help others in my spare time. And I help, and one of the ways you repay me when I help you to pass the bar is you have to become one of my assistants because we have to take on others to help them. So that's my passion.
And Judge Rogers, just for our records, how long were you teaching at Benedict? What course were you teaching? And, tell me a bit about how you got into teaching.
Okay, I'll tell you. I come from a family of teachers, and I was the only one that wasn't a teacher. And I was the only one that was a lawyer, and still am. When it was broadcast all over the news that the only African-American female judge in South Carolina was not going to be reelected, was losing her seat, it was all over the news. I had to pack up, and I was being replaced by a white female. Dr. Swinton called me and asked me to come to Benedict to speak with him. So I left up my office and went to him, and I had never been to Benedict College ever in my life. My parents went there, but I went to USC, so I'd never gone to Benedict or visited Benedict. And when I went there, he said, "I want you to come here and work for a couple of years to get some rest." He said, "I want the students." He did the one thing that I want diversity to do for the bench. He said, "I want the students to see someone like them who is a real judge, not somebody they read about." And he said, Dr. Swinton said, so as you teach students about what the judiciary is about, what the law is about, I want you, Abigail, to learn from them and what they overcame to get here to Benedict. Because oftentimes, as you know, with HBCUs, they cater to those who are first generation. And I wasn't first generation, but I'm first generation lawyer. And he said, you will see how they overcome obstacles and family crises and personal crises to get to college finally. Learn from them. So for 3 years, I taught, but I spent a lot of time with the students learning from them. So after 3 years, Dr. Swinton said, do you want to stay? I had to get some rest because, you know, the judiciary is stressful. Judiciary was difficult. Being in the public's eye was difficult. I'd had a new baby. That was difficult. All of that. And he said, get some rest. So after 3 years, he said, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And at that time, my kid was about 3. And I said, I'd like to stay. And to stay in teaching, I had to return to the University of South Carolina and get a master's of criminology and master's in criminal justice and start a PhD because I had to have more degrees to teach. So at Benedict, I taught and all law courses, judiciary, police, and the law, legal studies, but it was so much fun. It's fun teaching first generation. It's fun teaching at a small school. It's next to tutoring people to pass the bar, young aspiring lawyers to pass the bar. Teaching is fun. Teaching at a small college is fun there. So that's what I did at Carolina. So I'm ever grateful to Dr. Swinton for giving me a chance to come and rest and then learn from the students. So I'm now back out to teach those. It looks like that my calling now, my mission now, is to help people to become members of the South Carolina Bar. That's my new mission now, along with practicing law.
And Judge Rogers, let's talk about the future. You've accomplished so much in your career. You've given back to your community. What is the legacy you hope to leave behind?
The one thing I wanted to mention also, how thankful I am to those African American women who went before me and ran and were not elected as judges. I was not the first to run. I was the first to get elected. So what I did was, and I ran several times and wasn't elected, but I watched and stayed around the legislature because remember, we're one of 2 states where the legislature still elects judges. So the power to elect judges is within the legislature. The one thing that I wanted to point out is the South Carolina Bar was behind me all the way, found me qualified, and was always supportive. When you go to the legislature, it's different. It's politics. So I watched where other African American women, very brilliant, tough African American women, tried to become judges and were not successful. And each time they ran, they chipped away at the big wall that was there, where legislators couldn't see an African American female, couldn't see a black female become a judge. I could watch them just chipping away, and I knew that maybe my time was coming. So I'm very thankful to those who went before me. So when I started running, I ran several times, I had to convince them, here is another African American female qualified to become a judge. Take a risk. Take a chance. I had to tell legislators because I was asking them to make history, to do something that in the history of South Carolina, can you imagine, had never been done before. I am an African American female. My ancestors come from Africa like everybody else. I'm raised during segregation. Parents, we weren't rich, we were middle class, but trust me that you can trust me on the bench, that I will represent you well, and I will do exactly what the law requires us to do. And so I had to spend years doing that. So that was a great honor when they elected me. And they had to be comfortable. And it's difficult oftentimes for legislators to be comfortable with diversity, but we can't give up. So I'm hoping that my legacy for those is to never stop trying. You will have obstacles, personal, professional obstacles. You will always have them, but you have to keep pushing. So that's what I'm hoping that my legacy will be. That you see me, see Abigail, a first African American female family court judge, first African American female judge in the history of South Carolina, who endured a lot in the position but kept going. So I'm hoping I'm a role model for overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
The one thing I learned from all of this is to not take criticism personally, not to internalize criticism, because that will stop you. I had to learn that being a role model, being a trailblazer, or stepping out in front of anybody attracts criticism. Negative criticism, positive criticism, but you can't internalize it. You have to keep walking. So I had to learn not to internalize criticism, not to take everything personally. And if you want to succeed, you have to be able to take what will help you and then throw out what's going to hurt you and keep moving, or you will stay in one place. I was hoping that the kids in the court, the minority kids especially, coming into family court, would see me and look up and say, wow, I can be her, or I can be just like her. That was one of the advantages I felt of being in family court, that the young people would come through. You know, when you come from a family like mine that believes in God, believes in spirituality, believes in your spirit. You must have a spirit of a drive that so many have tried so hard to get you to where you are now. You must take that and go forward one step at a time. I lived that life, and I was taught that life. So anybody who thinks they can't do anything, there are those who want to be doctors who say, I just can't be a doctor, or I can't be a lawyer, or I can't be a judge, family court judge. There's no such thing, because I'm hoping that you look at me and know I didn't have a plan B. I knew that the spirit within, I had a drive to overcome, that I was going to be a lawyer. And then when I got in the system and saw the judiciary, because I was working in it, said I need to get to the judiciary so that I could bring to the bench the characteristics of a person who's a minority to enrich the judiciary. So to answer your question, no one should give up on their dreams. No one should let obstacles stop them, because if you do, you'll never achieve. So whether it be a female, black female, white male, you just have to push through. Have to. And I'm hoping that I'm a role model for